I am Nick, the director of events for the store. Today, we are celebrating the debut novel for Alex Brown. Congrats, Alex! Yay! Damned if you do. In conversation, we have Gina Chen. Thank you so much for being a part of this, Gina.
Yes, I always love it.
As some of you might know, this should have been an in-store event, but you know what? Sometimes we got to pivot, and the internet is here to catch us. Just like all the sweet late-night Facebook scrolling or YouTubing that 2 hours later, you're still awake. Anyway. So as I said, we are celebrating Damned If You Do, Alex's debut novel. Alex is a queer biracial Filipino-American writer who was a showrunner's assistant on the final season of Supernatural and the Resident Evil TV adaptation for Netflix. Alex was one of the inaugural recipients of the SCBWI On the Verge Emerging Voices Award, was a Tin House Scholar for their YA Winter 21 workshop, and a finalist for the 2021 Walter Grant. A lot of cool stuff. We were very fortunate to have Alex, I believe it was last year, last year, in store for the release of The Gathering Dark, an anthology of folk horror. For those who maybe attended that one, it was definitely a dark and stormy night, very befitting of the book. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, we have Gina Chen in conversation. Gina tells stories about fantastic worlds featuring heroines, anti-heroines, and the kind of cleverness that brings trouble in its wake. A self-taught artist with a degree in computer science, she generates creative nonsense in all forms of media and always has a project stewing. I can't say Violet Made of Thorns just came out, but Violet Made of Thorns paperback just came out. So if you all been waiting for paperback, you can get it.
It's very sleek and soft. I was like very surprised when I think.
Ooh.
And I am so. Wait, are you going to stay here? Nick, I forgot.
Huh?
Are you staying here, Nick? I forgot.
I'll stay here for a little bit.
Oh, okay. No, I was going to say I'm like so excited to see you again, Alex, because that was actually the first event I moderated last year. So it's like it's been a whole year. We're glad to have you back, and we'll see you again. At Mysterious Galaxy in person. I think later in this year or.
Yeah.
Yep. September.
Oh, September. So it's very soon. So you'll see her then.
Yes. Next month, Alex will be back in store as conversation partner for, I believe she's in the chat. We saw her, Leanne Schwartz, for her debut book event.
Yeah.
And not only that, this is not your only book that's out this month. So I wanted to shout out that as well. You have the anthology, Night of the Living Queers. So very busy month for you.
Yeah. Night of the Living Queers is coming out August 29th. Mm-hmm. And if you like anthologies that take place on Halloween, and are written by queer BIPOC authors, come check it out.
And since Alex will be here for Leanne's event, you can also get those books and have them signed by Alex then. But if you have purchased or still need to purchase your own copy of Damned If You Do, if you do so by August 24th, we'll make sure they're whisked away safely so Alex can come in store and sign and personalize. So make sure to get your orders in if you haven't already. If you see the link below, if you're watching live, there's buy, signed, personalized copies of Damned If You Do, which you can click right now. If you all have been used to our Crowdcast version 1, well, welcome, we're in 2. So if you want to pose your questions towards the end of the event, they're on the right side of the screen now. Click the question mark, and you can put your questions there. All right, now this is the part where I'll disappear. I'll leave it to you, Gina. You're in great hands, everyone. She is solid. All right, I'll see y'all later.
So, hey, Alex. So, let's just get right into it. You're like, I absolutely loved reading Damned If You Do. Why don't you give your own introduction and pitch of the story of the book first?
Sure. So Damned If You Do is kind of like queer Buffy the Vampire Slayer. If Buffy was a high school stage manager, and Giles was a demon pretending to be a high school guidance counselor.
Yeah.
And my main character, Cordelia, discovers that she accidentally sold her soul to the guidance counselor demon years back. And now the demon has come back to town because he needs her help with a problem since he helped her out way back when. I too hate when that happens.
I know, right? You're just trying to survive high school and then all this.
Mm-hmm.
So my absolute favorite thing about the book is that it's like really genuinely a horror comedy. I know that's in your pitch, but then like as soon as you start reading it, I think it's so in your face. It's so fun. And I think it's also like a very cathartic genre in multiple ways, because horror is kind of cathartic for a lot of the marginalized people who are already treated as kind of monstrous. And then no matter what you do, right? And then comedy provides another outlet for these same people, because it gives you as a form of maybe coping or sarcasm that you're allowed to talk about with people who are in the in-group. And you have like your theater jokes and your cultural jokes. And I'm not a theater person, but I was like, I bet someone's going to love reading that when they get to it. So you do so much with it. So was it always going to be this horror comedy? Like, how did this book start? How did that idea grow?
Yeah, so it was, the idea came when I watched Jennifer's Body for the first time a few years ago. I had like always been intrigued by the movie, but kind of stayed away from it because the marketing campaign when it first came out was like horrible. And I was like, man, this movie's probably really bad. And then I watched Jennifer's Body and I was like, this is very, very good. And I was like, it was mistreated. Justice for Jennifer's Body. But basically what happens in that is Megan Fox's character gets possessed by a demon and starts to kind of turn into a demon herself. And you have Amanda Seyfried, who is her best friend, who is kind of trying to... I also hate when that happens. Yes, you are Mysterious Galaxy. But her best friend is kind of trying to figure out what's happening with Jennifer, who's Megan Fox. And you kind of see Megan
Fox. Yeah. Sorry, I love that.
Jennifer / Megan Fox. And you watch Megan Fox basically go through and like kill a bunch of dudes. And you're kind of like, you know what? You've got a point, Megan Fox. But while the movie's going on, Megan Fox and Amanda Seyfried also have this kind of like, they're best friends, but they have sort of a will they won't they thing. And like it kind of could lean in that direction, but then like it doesn't wind up doing that at the end. And by the time the end hit, I was like, I just want Megan Fox and Amanda Seyfried to be together. Like, come on now. And they don't wind up together. And that, to me, I was just like, this just burns. I burn with rage. So I was like, I want to fix it, basically. Not that there's anything wrong with Jennifer's Body. It's an excellent movie, but I wanted them to be together. So that's kind of where the idea is I emailed my then agent at the time, and I was just like, hey, so what if I just like did Jennifer's Body, but they wanted to at the end? And my agent was like, hell yeah, let's go. So it wound up at first not being very funny and more like angsty and like dark and like it's still, my main character was the Amanda Seyfried like person basically, and she was kind of watching her best friend turn into something, you know, like dark and scary and all of these things, and they had the will they or won't they thing. And in like earlier versions of the draft, like I actually had like the main character like kill her best friend and then like find a way to like resurrect her essentially like at the end. So like they like solved the problem and like wound up together, but there was still like a sacrifice. And it didn't work for a lot of reasons, but weirdly in the first draft, a thing that popped up kind of near the end, like at the 2/3 mark of the book, like this demon just like popped up and was like, hey, like, you know, these bad things are happening because like of me essentially and like this deal that we made. And I was like, I didn't plot that draft out. I didn't know what was happening, but the demon showed up. And then through a lot of reworkings of the draft, we like finally got to like this horror comedy, like Buffy thing. But it was really because the demon was kind of cool and the rest of it was sort of like just very slow and angsty. And it wasn't working. And it took a few drafts. It took a lot of drafts to like figure out how to do that. But yeah, once we finally kind of figured out the like emotional core of the story, then it all fell into place. But it was a very long answer. But yeah, essentially,
no, that's perfect.
It started out the Jennifer's Body fix it fic, and then Buffy.
No, I mean the amount of things that have come out of fix it fic, right?
Right.
And that's so interesting because I think if you've read the book, you'd be like, you can see the Jennifer's Body influence, but you would never think, I think it started from that. Because definitely the demon gets introduced in like chapter 2 or chapter 3. And it's a wonderful introduction, by the way. I was like, Alex is having the time of her life describing this demon like lounging there, doing whatever.
Yes.
So no, but that's like that's super cool. Also, spoilers for Jennifer's Body, I guess, and
Yeah,
spoilers for your book, actually.
His Body, my bad. I just spoiled that. But you should watch it. It's good, and don't like if you remember the marketing campaign from like 10, 15 years ago when that thing came out, ignore it, throw it away. It was very bad.
It's funny because I know it mostly from like Tumblr GIFs, which definitely marketed way better than any other marketing campaign it has ever had. So
I feel like that's what got me to watch it, because I was just like, a sad, lonely queer, and I was just like, you know what, these Tumblr GIFs, I think they're onto something. And then I watched the movie and I was like, hell yeah, they were. This is great.
So did you draw on like different inspirations like later on, or like after you sort of moved on from I was like, oh, we're not going to do as much angst in the beginning, and we're going to focus on the demon. Did you switch over to some other inspirations, or did you already have ideas in mind?
Yeah, I think like once we moved away from like the angsty version of the story, it kind of became more of a like more Buffy. Because I started to think more about just the things that like I found entertaining and like I liked consuming, and the tone of Jennifer's Body is a horror comedy, and I was kind of just like, I can be funny sometimes.
It was very funny.
Yeah.
Did you name her Cordelia from Buffy, or was she always?
No, okay, cool. I think she was always Cordelia, but it was always a nod to Buffy.
Okay, yeah, that's cool.
Cordelia and Buffy is like my favorite character. We don't talk about what happens to her at the end of Angel. Not canon. It didn't happen. But she, if you count like Buffy and Angel, goes through like one of the best arcs that I've like ever seen a character do. So yeah, I named her after that, Cordelia.
Well, I like never personally followed Buffy, but my sister did. So I kind of like got the fallout from her. So I was like, oh, I know she goes through a very interesting story. So very good choice. So let's actually talk about Cordy. How would you describe Cordy for the audience?
Oh man. She is very into being a stage manager. Like that's like her big thing, because it is a way for her to kind of make sense of the world and have something in her life that like she feels is in her control. Not in like a bad way, just in like she had kind of a rough time growing up, and you find out that the demon deal she makes was to send her abusive father to hell. So she is kind of struggling with that, because she thinks that he just kind of packed up one day and left and moved to like Florida. But then you find out that he did not pack up and leave and go to Florida. Like she actively made a choice to send him there. So she's dealing with a lot of like trauma that she'd kind of like bottled up and like packed away. And is also trying to, sort out her feelings for her best friend, who is also a girl. And she's like, I don't know, like what's going on here, or if she likes me back, or like just wants to be friends, which is like very confusing. And I think she's kind of just trying to make it through the rest of her senior year of high school, kind of with like, with her like nose down, like she sort of just wants to blend in, and make it through Tech Week for the show that she's stage managing, and then everything kind of falls apart from there, and she can't she can't blend in anymore. She can't sort of just disappear into the big mass of people. She has to like actually like do something and like, have agency and like take that part of her life back.
Actually, before we get into the other aspects, I wanted to know like how, like I'm pretty sure you are obviously a very big theater nerd, and you've actually done the stuff that Cordelia has done. Like was that really fun to like? How you get really specific in it, and I wish I knew more about theater stuff so that you could get.
Yeah. I love theater. I did it in high school. I was in like ensembles for like musicals and stuff, and still do it now. I was in an ensemble for musical like a couple months ago. Merrily We Roll Along, for anyone who cares about musicals. It was great. It was a good show. But yeah, I've also stage managed. I stage managed a couple plays like a few years ago when I lived in like the San Francisco area. And like stage managing is like probably my favorite thing. Like I do enjoy like, acting and whatnot, but like that's not my like, I'm there kind of in the background in the ensemble. But I love like just being like the little organized person who like helps the show kind of go, and like being the one who is like the audience doesn't see you, but like the cast and the rest of the crew, like everyone else sees like everything you do to make everything, you know, go off without a hitch. Or they see how you like can pivot and like make quick decisions that will like keep the show going if something does go wrong. So that part's always been like really fun and like fascinating for me. So I was like, I just want to put this in like a little teenager and have her like it too.
Oh, she's awesome. And you don't shy away from like some very big, heavy topics in Cordelia's story. Like there's you have the trigger warnings at in the beginning of the book, the content abuse alcoholism. But I think the way you handle these topics, like via this genre, via horror comedy, made it feel very cathartic. And when you were writing this, what kind of things did you consider when you were mixing the very fantastical horror with all these real life horrors that people here or people in real life might experience?
Yeah. I mean, I think for me that is the nice thing about like horror or kind of like genre stuff in general, right? Is you can take these like awful things that we experience every day and you can put it into something different so that it's a new way for you to kind of like work out your fears or your anxieties or your complicated feelings towards something. And it's a different way to have like, in this case, like demons coming out and being terrible, minus Fred, who's the guidance counselor demon. He's the best. But the rest of the demons, you have this kind of like not real thing that you can make real in the story that is like a tangible thing that's kind of coming after your characters, right? It's like in It Follows, like you get the demon thing following you after, you like hook up with somebody, and like you just see the thing coming and like pursuing you, and like it's a very good metaphor for like, many different things, and we can have many conversations about that movie. But it's taking the unquantifiable and like putting it into something that you can focus on. And I think for me that was like a good way of kind of addressing like a lot of the things that like I've experienced and a lot of other people out there have also unfortunately experienced, which is like abuse from a parent, and like how do you reconcile with like what is done to you from someone who is supposed to like unconditionally love and care for you, and then like what do you sort of do with that, and how do you work through it?
Mm-hmm. And like that's what I always say I love fantasy or other fantastical genres, because it gives you a way to like amplify certain parts of like things that happen in real life, and you can focus on those parts and really break apart those themes and ideas. By the way, I love the title of the book because I think specifically it really applies to Cordelia. It's like the damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? So was it always named like this? People always get very curious about how you get a title.
Yeah. So in the earlier versions of my book, probably up until like the one or two drafts before we like put it out on sub, it was called Not While I'm Around, because the production they were doing wasn't an original production. And Sweeney Todd was tied into it, like with the demons, and I mean there aren't demons in Sweeney Todd that are real, but it's people. But it was like a whole thing. I was getting really artsy with it. But yeah, so the title was a song from Sweeney Todd, and then my agent was kind of like, I don't know if we can do this because of copyright and whatnot, and I was like, touche. And then we switched Sweeney Todd out for like an original musical, which I think works better anyway. But
I love that within the Jennifer's Body Fix It fic, there was like maybe also a Sweeney Todd fic, like lying in wait.
It was Sweeney Todd. It was in there. It's weird. The bones of Sweeney Todd the musical were also kind of in how the characters did things and moved around. It was the early version of this was a strange creature. But yeah, so once the Sweeney Todd went away, there was no point in using Not While I'm Around anymore as the title. So then I just started thinking of like demon puns, and was kind of just rattling off random like sayings and stuff in like one of my friends' DMs one day, because I was like, I don't know what to make this title. And then I think instead of saying damned if you do, I wrote devil if you do for some reason, because I was on like a string of like devil puns. And I was like, devil if you do is not the saying there. And I was like, damned if you do. And then we both were kind of like, that one's it. So then that's how
it's so fitting, because when I think when you read Cordelia, you're like, oh yeah, you really feel that she's stuck in this such a difficult place. And for the audience, before we go on, make sure to include ask your questions for Alex, and we will answer them during the chat.
Yeah.
I will be paying attention. So besides Cordelia, did you have a favorite character to write?
Yes.
I love the whole cast, by the way. Because I think a lot of them, you meet them for the first time, you get an impression of them, and you meet them later on, and you're like, oh wait, they're like so entertaining now. They're like just as snarky as Cordelia.
Yes. Yeah, they all just snark at each other, but also share like one brain cell between all of them. It's fun. Yeah, I think probably my favorite, I'm sorry, Cordelia, is Fred, just because he's
I get it. I mean, he changed the book, right?
He did. He came in and was like, hi, I'm here. He is our demon pretending to be a guidance counselor. His office has like live, laugh, love posters and like, tchotchkes, and like it looks like someone walked into like a Michael's and just took everything garish and gaudy and threw it up in an office.
Like a demon Karen, but positive.
Yeah, a positive demon Karen. That is Fred. But yeah, he's just funny because, as a demon, he isn't really used to people or like how they do things. So he's kind of the fun fish out of water guy who's like making commentary on like random things. Or I think one of my favorite jokes in there is he says something like, oh, well, it's not easy. It's not like walking into the Super Bowl. And Forty is like, well, you can't just do that. So he says silly things like that where you're just like, oh, you demon. That's so funny.
Were you inspired at all by like the Good Place? Because he gave me like Ted Danson from Good Place vibes, like big.
Yeah, I feel like I was definitely watching The Good Place while I was trying to figure this book out too. But yeah, Ted Danson's character in that is also a good like inspiration point.
So now that I like learned the origins of how this book came out, like I find it very interesting. Like, was his character then like how did his character change as the drafts went on?
I feel like he got more of a personality. Like when the like first iteration of him was very like Deus Ex Machina. Like he was just kind of, because I think if I remember right, she like killed her. Cordy would kill her best friend Veronica and like be really sad about it and be like, no, but she like had to. And then she goes to the demon and is basically like, all right, I need you to like bring her back now or whatever. And the demon's like, cool, but then you have to do something for me essentially. But that's kind of all he was just kind of a big, ominous shadow guy who was just sort of like, I have magic powers if you need.
Now he's a dork.
Yeah. And now he's a dork and he becomes kind of an accidental father figure. Not just to Cordy, but I feel like to the whole little group of teens. Like he just sort of randomly adopts a bunch of teens that he was not expecting.
And they adopt him.
And he takes more of like, the Giles kind of approach and is like the adult, even though he like has no idea how to be an adult too.
But he tries his best. He tries his best. Moving on to a slightly different topic, I think it's very cool how you mixed different mythologies. So you approach the Catholic mythology and the demons and like how to stop them from the standpoint of people who were colonized by the Spanish. So I thought it was really cool because you just like directly talk about it in the text. And not only that, you actually just mixed it up, mixed the story mythology with Filipino mythology with the Aswang. And I think there's like a lot of funny moments where Cordelia is like, I'm the only one in the room who knows like truly the breadth and depth of what is going on here, because no one understands both sides like that. Did you have like a favorite part about exploring those kind of details or putting those details in the story?
Yeah. So I think like, I mean, with the Catholicism of it all, like it's just been like, so my mom is Filipino, like my dad is white, and like growing up we were very Catholic and would like go to Catholic church and everything. And like I just remember at some point in my life I was like, this is really weird, because like this is not, once I found out what happened in the Philippines and like, how colonization goes, and like how when Spain colonized the Philippines, the conquistadors went in and basically just burned like everything like of our existing culture, and like we're like, this is what you do now, this is what you think and believe. So it's just kind of like those like things that hit you where you're like, dang, we only think this because like someone came in, took everything from us and told us what to think. So it's like, I don't know, it's just very fascinating. But to me, I wanted to like, talk about it in the book, because I haven't seen a lot of like that explored yet. And like, I think it is a very important point to make, in that, with like demons and Catholicism, like we are looking at a very Catholic view of everything, but like demons aren't specific just to Catholicism. Like it's like, cultures all around the world like have different ways of like exorcism and like different beliefs and everything like that. So it was very important to me to like kind of address that and be like, yes, we are looking at this one specific subset, but then like also why did we get shoved into this part and are like pigeonholed in it. And then for like the Aswang in general, like it is a very big like monster in like Filipino folklore. And I feel like whoever you talk to, if you find like a Filipino friend or like know anyone, someone's got a story, or like someone knows like their uncle or like a friend of like their aunt who like ran into the Aswang like somewhere, there's like always a story. So
do you have like the one in real life?
I do not. I want one in real life. I'll get one day. I probably shouldn't say that, because now it's gonna walking down the street and something terrifying is gonna happen. Could be cool. Who knows?
It's probably another story.
It'd be another story for sure. But yeah, I think like it's also fascinating how, transmutable like folklore and like monsters are, and how like, if you have the Aswang in the Philippines, like that could mean something different to someone who is Filipino American, or anyone in the Filipino diaspora. So to me, like I did want to honor, the traditional Aswang, but then also put like a twist on it, because I do think that, folklore and like mythologies kind of like change with the time, and they change a little bit each time with who's telling the story. So that's kind of the mindset that I went into when I like created the Aswang for this book too.
So I'm taking a question from the audience. So
yeah.
Was a lot of the Filipino folklore, was it something introduced from your family? Which I know it was introduced by Veronica's family in the book. And do you have do you have a favorite piece of folklore, or is it like the Aswang and or something else?
Ooh. So I have a very complicated relationship with like being Filipino, because when I was growing up, I was kind of in a like majority white, city. And for me, I shied away from a lot of it because I wanted to be able to blend in, and I didn't want to be different, and I like didn't want to draw attention to myself. So I distanced myself a lot from that culture when I was younger. And it really wasn't until kind of college and up that I started to think about, what I'd done a lot more. And I was like, that's really messed up, actually. Like I shut off like a whole part of myself just because like I wanted to fit in. When really, it felt like I could have had this part of myself this whole time. So a lot of my kind of older years have been sort of like trying to catch up with like the things that I missed. So I did not have a family, folklore story, though I should ask my mom. But I did do a lot of folklore research. Even before I wrote Damned, like I was just kind of reading a bunch of stuff to sort of see, like what things I didn't know. My favorite monster in Filipino folklore is, I don't know if I'm saying it right, but the Bakunawa. It's like Bakunawa. It is a big serpent, like a big giant serpent, that is supposed to eat the moon.
Oh, that's very big.
Yeah, it's like a huge giant serpent that's like purpose is to eat the moon. And I just find that fascinating. I'm like, what happens after it eats the moon? Why does it want to eat the moon? Like, what's gonna go on? I just want to know more. So that's like
I want to know more, yeah.
Right? Because it's just this big scary snake that wants to eat the moon.
I think it's really satisfying as an author to write for like a very specific audience and to consider that like a group that is not usually the main audience, like considered the main audience for media as your primary audience. Like I'm always thinking of Everything Everywhere All at Once, and I'm like, this is such a specific story. I cannot believe they made this story. So I also really like them, because I think it's like a very specific story in a very good way. And I think everyone can get something from it, but I think people who like really know what the story's about, they're like, oh, like I'm seeing my specific history here as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to take some more questions here. How many manuscripts did you write before Damned If You Do, and were they always horror? And I do know you love horror, so I'm actually kind of curious about like if like horror's like totally everything that's in your future as well.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing that's in my future. This Damned If You Do was my first like stab. Yeah, before that I had written too many things that were not good. I think Damned was
that's every writer, right? Yeah.
It's true. You gotta come up with the not good ones to find like the good ones, and everything is like a learning opportunity. Like just because the first however were not that great, like you're still learning craft and like figuring out how to tell the story you want to tell. But all that to say, I think Damned was my like 7th or 8th manuscript maybe. But before that they had been like mostly fantasy and sci-fi, some contemporary fantasy too. Yeah, there was a lot of like secondary world like fantasy and then like a space opera. It was a random smattering of many things, and a parallel universe story that happened too.
Was this from like your own interest, or were you following like for what reasons did you choose these genres?
That's a good question. I think part of it was I was like, oh, this would be a fun story, but a lot of it was influenced by things I was reading or things that were like kind of out at the time. Like the parallel universe story happened when like Fringe was a big TV show.
Oh.
Yeah, spoilers, I guess, for Fringe if you haven't watched that show.
No, I mean, I feel like it's like as soon as you said Fringe, I'm like, oh, that's kind of horror adjacent though, because it's pretty like I feel like it has elements.
Yeah, it's like sci-fi horror, I guess, like paranormal fantasy.
Yeah. Like I think there's like whenever I think about like certain sci-fi pieces of media, I think some are more horror than others, or like some involve more like I don't know, the scenarios that you get in, or like the things that happen to like a character's body or something like that. It just feels more horror.
Yeah. Oh yeah, body horror.
Yeah, body horror. Oh yeah.
I can't do it.
Oh, you can't do it?
I don't know. It's just weird. Like whenever, okay, if you all have not seen His House on Netflix, I will not spoil it, but there is one scene in His House. It's a good movie. It's a fabulous movie. You need to watch it. But if you do not like body horror, there's one scene in that movie that's just like, oh God. And that I think about that at least once a day, and it's just troubling. So.
But would you write that body horror in?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit kind of in Damned If You Do, I guess, with like the transformations like into the monster and stuff. I don't know if I would write it like firsthand because Cordy is never like experiencing the body horror. I don't know. It's just there's something about it that just feels so visceral to me that like I just don't even know if I could do it like from a first person perspective.
I think it'd be interesting to see how you would like handle it because you have it's the things that you have such a visceral reaction to that you're like, oh, I know exactly how it gets to me and why, and then you like I feel like I could like explain it if I had a story to do it in, but then it would like exhaust me.
I feel like I would need a break after that. I'd be like, all right.
I don't know.
Off for like a month now. This was too much.
Well, I was also thinking about, because I just revised the short story I had for your other anthology coming out here, which has a new title, which I don't remember at this moment. So,
it is now called The House Where Death Lives.
yes, The House Where Death Lives. And I was like, when I pitched it, I'm like, oh, it's like, I can't imagine being a Chinese daughter, like an immigrant Chinese daughter. Like, I can't imagine as anything but a horror story. And I felt like, when I read Damned If You Do, I felt like similar to me. I was like, oh, this is like the horror story of growing up this way. And like, you cannot imagine as anything like, and it's very cathartic to write about, right? Like some like the main characters can do horrible things. I will say, I feel like my main character is way less regretful about the things that she does than Cordelia. But and it's not about like wanting to do what the main character does, but it's kind of like fleshing out the feelings that they have and the result of growing up in such a manner of like what could be, right? And definitely what happened in Cordelia's childhood is definitely what could happen, right? Like if you're a child, if you're 10 and I don't know how deeply you want to describe the scene, but definitely she sends her father to hell in a pretty horrible fashion. But she's 10 and she's being abused. So it's like, and it's not like it doesn't become a matter of blame. It's it's such an easy action to take as a child because you're just trying to survive.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I really like how you handled everything.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, a lot of it did stem from like that point of like you made a hard choice to survive, and now you have to figure out how you feel about it and figure out, how to kind of like not move on from it, but like move through it, kind of, and embrace yourself for the choice that you had to make. Because it's not, it wasn't an easy choice or like something she takes lightly, and a lot of it like haunts her through the whole book. But yeah, it's like, there are things that we have to do or like choices we have to make in this life that like suck, basically, like, as an understatement. But you have to make them. And it's just like, when you kind of have to face the consequences of that, like, how do you face them?
And regardless, the action has already been done. Like, certainly, right. Even Cordelia's dad could have had a path to redemption if he reflected of himself. It's not up to Cordelia to forgive him or anything, but he could have done that. It's possible. So it's all about the path we choose after the deed has already been done.
Yeah.
So I think that's really interesting too. There is a question from Crystal. What advice would you give aspiring writers? I think you gave some advice with the many, many drafts. But do you have anything else to give now that you have released your debut novel?
Yeah. Crystal, hello. She was my Pitch Wars mentee.
Oh.
Yeah, Crystal's great. But yes, my advice, oh God, I don't know. Just write. I think, that's like the most important thing is to like write something and finish it. But like, don't kind of do what I did and be influenced by like what you think might sell or like what is, the trend right now or whatever, because trends change and publishing moves really slowly, and a book you sell now won't come out for a couple years anyway. But like write the story that feels the most like you. And like people always say like write the story only you can write, but like that's very true, because like I spent a lot of time writing stories that I thought I should write, or that other people would think were good because they were close to other things that existed. But it really wasn't until I started digging into my own experiences and like writing things that felt very true to me and my style, that like stuff actually started happening. So I think like people want to know like that authentic, truly you story, and they're hungry for it and like they're ready for it. So I think, even if it is kind of a scary thing to do or you don't really know how to get started, there are a lot of free resources online with how to like structure plot or like how to do outlines. But I think the most important thing you can do is just read a lot, like in any genre you want to write in, but also the other genres you don't want to write in. Because I think you learn something kind of from everything. And you can use books and movies and stuff as ways to break down kind of plot and structure. Like, you don't have to pay like $50 billion to like go to a fancy school to like get a degree. Like, just use the books and the things around you, and they'll help you out a lot.
I think that story is very cinematic, and I think it's very, like, I feel like I can tell it's very influenced by horror, TV, and movie, which also becomes apparent when you talk about them. You're like, from blah, 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 if you get this reference. So I think it's really cool. I forgot. It's okay. I'm like, the thing about being moderator is like trying to keep the questions in your head and like trying to remember what's going on in the conversation. There is another question. Was there anything that had to get cut, like characters or scenes or whole sections, that you really wish you could have made it in? Which I would find really interesting because you went through so many drafts. And like I'm sure you wrote the angst version of this story with a lot of love. And so like I'd be definitely curious about like any favorite scenes you had to cut from that.
Yeah. Yeah, God, I'm sure there were many things that were cut that I do not remember anymore.
Yes. that is the terrible part, right? Like,
right?
People ask you about what canon is, and you're like, I don't remember, that was 6 drafts ago.
I don't know anymore. There is one thing though. So I named the like antagonist demon, his name is Jesse. And in early versions of the draft, or earlier, there was and there still is in the final book, there's a scene at which the characters are doing karaoke. But in this version of the book, it is Veronica, the best friend, who starts doing the karaoke song, which is Call Me Maybe, which is a bop.
I was surprised by how much of the song you're able to put in there, because usually you can't.
I know that was all on my publisher.
So okay. I
know
hear
what
people,
magic.
I just hear, so like what I've heard is like you can't put more than 2 lines of a song in a book or something, and then because it gets complicated with copyright. So they just kept singing, and I'm like, oh my god, you can just do this.
Going. I know. When I did it, I was like, I'm sure this is gonna get cut eventually, but then I guess it didn't. So Page Street, you're the best. I don't know what you did. Keep doing it. But yeah, so they sing Call Me Maybe, and Veronica starts it. But what happened in like a previous version was that it was still a high angst point between Cordy and Veronica. And there was a whole like thing where Veronica was pretending to fake date Jesse, the bad demon. So Cordy, in an attempt to kind of like try to win Veronica back, gets up on the karaoke stage and sings Jesse's Girl.
Oh my god!
And the only reason I named the demon Jesse was to be able to do the Jesse's Girl karaoke bit. And then when I realized I had to flip it and Veronica had to do it, and there was no fake dating between Veronica and Jesse anymore, I was like, so that's the one sad thing, is there was never a Jesse's Girl karaoke.
So wait, how did you land on Carly Rae Jepsen?
How on Carly Rae Jepsen?
Yeah.
So the way that the demon, so basically the backstory for the town that they live in is that it was founded on the basis of a demon deal like 100 years prior. This is the 100th year. And there is a very specific ritual to like summoning the demon. So like every year you do a ritual in the hopes that like the demon will come to you and you'll be the one demon deal for that year. And then it repeats every year again. So there's only one deal each year. And specific rules to like try to get in on this demon deal. So part of it is that there is like this like ritual song that winds up happening, and you can make it kind of anything. So Cordy and Veronica, when they're younger, they decide that their like way to try to get the demon in is to sing Call Me Maybe as like part of the ritual. Because I really wanted it to be Call Me Maybe because it's such a good song. It was basically just because I love that song, and there were like some really good lines that you could use in karaoke to like be angsty. So I was like, heck yeah. But yeah, so they in the book use Call Me Maybe to try to like summon the demon. It doesn't work, and they think that like that's it. But then what winds up happening is Fred kind of swoops in the next day when Corey is in trouble, and then like does his demon thing. Yeah. I don't know if I question, but maybe
I hope someone like at Carly Jepsen and says, I think Call of Duty should be used in a ritual song for summoning. I think you should really appreciate that.
I hope so. Please, Carly.
Would you say that, like, I always associated with you with horror, maybe because I know you have so many horror anthologies coming out. But what about your future books? Like, what kind of future books are you looking at? Either genre or ideas, like however specific you want to get. I know that's different.
For future things?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. I mean, I think there's at least one more horror comedy coming. That'll be fun. And then probably a few more like horror things. But I would love to be able to branch out into like rom-coms at some point, because like they're just so cute and I love rom-coms.
I love that. Like, no horror in the rom-coms or what?
Yeah, it's like we'll just transition. The horror to rom-com pipeline is out here.
I would love to see a rom-com about a stage manager the way you write it.
Oh, thank you.
Because I mean, like, I don't know anything about it, but when you write it, I'm like, I see the vision.
Yeah, you're like, I too can do the stage managing. I'm ready. Put me in, coach. And I wanted to make sure that the stage managing wasn't like confusing for folks too. So that's it's good to know that it was like it made sense. That's good.
I was like, we actually talked through like most of the time. So I just wanted to make sure that we got through all the questions.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Do you have anything that you want to shout out? Maybe for something that you read, maybe something you watched. I think I remembered what I was going to ask earlier, which is like it was going to be the question of what other media were you consuming lately? Because I was thinking about when you're talking about reading outside of your genre for writers. I always say that you should also look at storytelling in other media to see how they do it. I always suggest visual novels because people forget about them, but there's so many stories that like you can really only tell in the visual novel format or a game format. I'm currently playing Baldur's Gate 3 because someone gave it to me, and I'm like, there's like an insane amount of storytelling in that. That's really fun, and it's very different.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think like I have been slowly getting into video games more. My like partner really loves video games. We've been doing a lot of horror video games because like that.
I was going to ask. Do you enjoy the jump scares?
Yeah, I think those jump scares are kind of like horror movie jump scares, thankfully, and then a lot of the time you can like see them, like you're like, yes, this jump scare is about to come. But there are some really good, like really creepy ones that when the jump scares get you, they get you good. Like Resident Evil 7, excellent game, very creepy, very good. But yeah, there is a lot of just like awesome storytelling in non-horror video games as well. Like the God of War, Ragnarok that just came out. Like I watched the playthrough of all of that and I got like weepy. I was like, oh man.
No, yeah, you can really like vicariously play through a good playthrough. Sometimes you don't want to. I don't want to be the person holding the controller. I just want to see someone else do it.
Also, like with The Last of Us, like I just like watched him do that as well because I'm not good at like I can't move the camera at the same time and like move the little guy and like do all the things. But like that video game is like fantastic. The TV show also fantastic. But like yeah, it's just. There's so many other cool things out there that aren't just in book form. Like some of them are interactive, like video games. Others, I am also a sucker for like Hallmark Christmas movies.
I
like,
love this quality.
Christmas movies, and we'll like watch them sometimes, not during Christmas season. But like,
sorry, I'm going to interrupt you for a second because I just remembered this joke you wrote in the book, and because we were talking about rom-coms, made me think of it. You have Taylor Swift joke in the book, and I was like, Alex is courting fire with this joke. Did you put it in intentionally? Like, what were you thinking when you put that in? I don't know if you want to talk about it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Taylor. So yeah, I'm not a big Taylor Swift fan. apologize. I'm glad for everyone that is. I love this for you. Like, that's amazing. That's great. But I've just never really been like that into her. So I didn't think about it when I wrote it. It was just like a throwaway thing of like Cordy's flipping channels on the radio, and she's just kind of commenting, like, you know, doing a one-word comment on like what she's hitting. And one of them is just like, I think it's like Taylor Swift, like, ugh. Like,
again.
Yeah. And I was just like, oh, it's kind of funny. And like, I'm slipping in my like Taylor Swift opinion, whatever. But that's like, people, like, when they read through it, have like messaged me or like, like, what's with this Taylor Swift comment? Like, it's just my thought. I don't know. So yes, I apologize, I guess, to Swift there, but she's not, I don't like her that much.
When you write your Hallmark movie / rom-com, whatever, I would love to see that character's Taylor Swift. I think you would horrify the audience, and I would love to do that. I'm just out here courting controversy.
I know, right? I feel like I'm gonna get like all these, like, they're gonna be like, this book was great, but didn't like Taylor Swift, like -10. It's gonna be like, oh, I'm so sorry.
I'm out here. Well, Nick from Mysterious Galaxy knows that I like to ask, like, what are your most controversial, like, I love that question. What's your most controversial book opinion? So if you have one, by the way, I would like to know your like most controversial book opinion. But I feel like I just like asked you the most controversial opinion, which is one on Taylor Swift.
That is probably the most controversial take I will ever have. Is that Taylor Swift just mostly, like, you know, I don't know. Again, if you love her, happy for you. Love that for you. But not mine. I have to think about my most controversial book opinion, though.
Yeah, I know, but it was such a great. I remember I got it on my debut panel. I'm like, why would you just like ask me that? I was like, that's just courting controversy. Except I have one now, which is that I like Taryn from The Prince, and it caused. Wait, I don't know which. I think I did that. I think I answered that in Chloe Gong's panel, but someone from the audience like audibly gasped, and it was like the funniest thing ever. If you're out here, I love you. That was I still remember that moment.
Yeah, I'll ponder that. We'll come back to it.
I would love you to. I would love for you to answer. And if you ever you are moderating a panel next month, so please insert that question into your panel, because I would love to hear every author's most controversial book opinion, actually.
Leanne, get ready for it.
I know, right? You already know who's coming. We have a few. Oh, hello.
Hello.
I wasn't sure if we had a few minutes left, but yes.
Yes, we totally do. But if you don't feel pressured, Alex, you don't have to answer it this time. But we want a great answer of a controversial book by the time Leanne's event.
I've got like a month. I'll be able to do it in a month.
Did you have something to interject now? Oh no, okay. It's very funny. The crowdcast, he just kind of like magic mirrors away, and it's very funny to me.
Okay, bye.
I was kind of, yes, but actually, now that we're just at the end of it, like, I now want to know more about your rom-com opinion, because, like, I think that's so interesting, because we talk so much about horror, and I think, like, you'll probably be here talking about horror again when some anthology, like, when you're, like, either of your next two anthologies comes out. So, what, like, do you ever find it funny that you love both, like, rom-coms and horror, like, these two things that are, like, so separate?
Yeah, I think, I feel like they're separate, but, like, they kind of make sense if you think about it just a little bit. I don't know.
Explain.
I think both kind of rely on a lot of emotional, like, response, like, from the audience, and emotions kind of from the characters, because, like, in rom-coms, like, if they don't have that chemistry, or, like, if it doesn't feel like they should be meant to be, like, why would you root for them if, like, it just, you can't really feel it, and, like, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. Like, you have to have that investment, like, from people from the get-go for your rom-com to be successful, right? And with horror, I think that's the way too, is, like, you need the emotional investment from the audience, like, into your characters to, like, actually genuinely feel like they might be in danger. Because if you don't feel like they're in danger, then, like, you don't really have a good horror thing going, because then you're just kind of watching people in mildly frightening situations. And it's just like, oh, okay. It's like, you know, like I love like Ghost Files with like Shane and Ryan, and like you never really feel like they're in danger, so it's just kind of more of, you know, two people going into a haunted space, like being silly and cracking jokes, right? Which is good, but if it's a horror, you don't want that the whole time. You don't want that sense of like kind of complacency and that people are safe. And I feel like with, you know, with like romance and like love and whatnot in general too, like you're in a very vulnerable position, like kind of, you know, having feelings for someone else, and you don't really know what's going to like happen. So it's like different kind of levels of vulnerability.
I love it. That's perfect. I mean, it sounds just like that quote. Someone says, I don't remember who said it, but it was like, write your love scenes like murder scenes and write your murder scenes like love scenes.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Because it's just all about the intimacy and vulnerability. It's just in different ways.
Yeah.
Yes. Someone says like, I love that. I was like, I don't remember who said it though. Like, it's a great. Like I always think about it as like writing advice. I think it was a writer who said it.
I mean, it makes sense because you want kind of with anything. It doesn't have to be horror or rom-com / romance. Like you want to get some kind of. You want whoever's consuming your thing to feel some sort of connection, like to the characters, you know. And they don't have to like root for them the whole time. They could hate them, like, but they need to feel something. Like something's got to happen here.
And I think that's like really like just fundamentally a great piece of writing advice too that we learned. Now we've run out of time, so it's such a great piece to end on. And not exact. Okay, did you want to do your ending promo now?
I just want to comment on what you said about the intimacy thing. That for some reason, when you said that, I just instantly thought of the song by The Police, "Every Breath You Take."
Oh,
have you heard that song?
Oh yes, yeah.
So
it's like actually about police surveillance, isn't it, or something?
It's about someone being watched. It's definitely like creepy, like stalker vibes, but the vibe sounds like, oh, that's romantic and intimate, and then you listen to the lyrics like, oh crap, someone's like watching you, like I see you, everything you do. So yeah, intimacy. Before we go, I want to know for both of you, where can people find you online so they can follow you, like intimately or not intimately, if you like want sisters, how dare you.
I am on the website formerly known as Twitter. We will still call it that. I'm not calling it the new name. But I'm on Twitter at gravity_fail09 because I made that in college. And now it's too late to change it. And Instagram at made this for Lou because I made it for a friend because they always wanted me to go on Instagram, and that was my begrudging compromise.
And now it's your professional handle.
Sorry, publishers and agents. It's not changing.
I am Actual Gina. You can find that. I'm actualgina.com. That's my website. And you can find me on whatever social media as that as well. Social media is always changing, but you will find me as that name wherever you will find me, which is on Instagram mostly currently.
Yeah.
Everyone, don't forget, if you haven't yet purchased your own copy of Damned If You Do, also maybe Gina Chen's paperback, copy of Violet May of Thorns, you can definitely order that. Click the link below. You can get both books. Make sure to get those orders in for Damned If You Do by August 24th if you want to sign a personalized copy. If you wait till later, guess what? You can still, like in the chat right now, attend also Leanne Schwartz's event and get your copies, both books there. There we go. All right. Thank you so much. Congratulations, Alex, on your debut.
Thank you.
You're staying so busy. Gina, thank you so much again for doing this.
Yeah. Anytime.
All right, everyone. I hope you all have a good day. If you're watching this in the future, have a good one. Bye.
Bye.